Good morning and welcome back to Coffee Break.
So today we're going to be talking about genre and how that exactly works with readers' expectations and describing what a book is really about.
Once we decided on this, we realized we had a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, like it started with, an innocuous question, and then you kind of go into the rabbit hole of genre and you realize that it's so much bigger than you think it is.
Yeah. Genre serves a really good purpose in helping us categorize books. It's helpful for publishers to give a good idea to booksellers of what this book is and how they can get it to the right people. It helps booksellers know where to stock a book. And it helps you as a reader know, kind of get a general idea of what's going to be in this book or where to find a book that you might like.
Right, so if you're looking for a self-help book, it's really nice to have a self-help section so you don't have to, go through all of the nonfiction books that a bookstore has.
Right.
I think genre functions in a lot of the same way that stereotypes do for people. It's a quick way to kind of categorize it and you get a sense of it, but at the same time, it's never going to give you the full scope.
Right.
And I don't know, it would be great to be able to say, don't judge a book before you read it, don't judge people before you get to know them, but the instant you see something, you are noticing things about it. You notice the book's cover, and you read the description, and maybe you've heard reviews about it, and yeah, you see what genre it's in. And this tells you things about the book before you get to read it. So there's no way of avoiding that, really.
Right. One drawback of genre is that sometimes you might be looking for a fantasy book, and so you just browse through the library or bookstore and find something that looks great. It's in fantasy, so you're like, great, magic, dragons, I generally know what to expect. But then that book really fits maybe across several genres or maybe only in this niche of fantasy, and if you hadn't known that it was categorized as fantasy, you might have really enjoyed it, but expecting a fantasy, it might let you down, not including those essential traditional elements.
You could categorize a paranormal book as fantasy, and those are, kind of different areas within the same genre.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to, keep those distinctions and everything. Genre lumps a lot of things together. I think another problem is that books can often fit into multiple genres. So, we have Crazy, and this is a novel in verse, and it's also historical fiction, and it's also an issue book because it deals with mental illness, and so it's where the heck do you put this thing? And yeah, so if someone's looking for a historical fiction book in the, 1960s, but this is stashed with YA issue books or something, they might miss out on this. So it's tough to try and, it can be tough to use genre in order to find the target audience.
Little sidebar, one nice thing then about browsing for books on the internet, even though you don't get to really get the feel of them as you do in a bookstore, at least you can maybe click on multiple genre tags or categories, however a website has it, and then you might be able to find it. So say I am looking for a historical fiction novel that includes mental illness, then Crazy would pop up. And that's kind of the cool thing about the internet now, is you can browse 3 different bookshelves at once. So how do you feel when an author publishes in multiple genres? Does it kind of throw you off, or do you get excited?
Yeah, and I think that's something where genre kind of helps you, right? Because J.K. Rowling, for example, she wrote Harry Potter, and then she's also writing these mystery novels. And if these weren't categorized as mystery novels, I would probably see her name on it and go, oh, J.K. Rowling, this is going to be another Harry Potter-esque thing.
Right. And then you would hate it.
Yeah, and then it's where's the magic? Where's, all of this other stuff? Yeah. So I think that's something where genre is kind of okay, yes, this is the same author, so you still might enjoy it, but just so you know, this is not going to be the same as this series.
Right. Are you going to take the opportunity to leap maybe into a new genre for you and discover something new because this author can kind of guide you? Or is it just frustrating because you're not getting more of what you know you love?
I think what makes me really happy is that I think people are embracing the idea of cross-sectional books more than they were, say, 20 years ago. Adults are reading YA novels. They don't see them as strictly for, children and everything. They're reading them for their own enjoyment. And I've seen bookstores with like paranormal romance sections, which is kind of nice, so that if you're looking for a book with those two elements, they're not going to be split between paranormal and romance. They have their own section.
Right.
Yeah, so I think, we're kind of embracing that idea of books fulfilling all of these different purposes. And that's good. It's good that people are realizing the dangers of limiting a book to, like taking the genre too seriously and thus limiting the book.
Yeah. I think also you're right about people not worrying too much about specific genres anymore. I mean, just for an example, a friend of mine just had no interest in reading Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter and just felt like she wouldn't like any fantasy. She just didn't really get it, didn't get her excited. But then she did read Twilight, which I would say fits into the broader fantasy genre, and she enjoyed it. Recently, she was convinced to read Stardust and enjoyed that, which I think is even more fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's fun to see her discover that maybe her genre bias is, like, it's getting broken down and realizing, yeah, maybe she might not like all fantasy books or traditional fantasy, but that she shouldn't discount fantasy completely. And it kind of makes me think, like, what genre bias do I have? Like, what books am I not reading?
Yeah, absolutely. Like sometimes I've picked up nonfiction books and like been like, okay, well, I'm really interested in this subject. This will probably be boring, but I can slog through it. And like they're page turners, you know, and that was something that I came with because I mostly read fiction.
I think a great example is The Fantastic Jungles of Henri Rousseau, which is nonfiction, but having that label can be misleading.
Right, because I mean, this is a children's book, it's written in present tense, so it feels like a story, like there's nothing in here that's really difficult to grasp, but I mean, it's all informative and it's all accurate and interesting, and yeah, exactly, so there are all of these like distinct subgroups and everything within larger genres, and I think it's important to have those so that you can keep more of these cross-sectional books
right,
where they belong. So I think the main thing is that, if you're concerned about genre and like, taking it too seriously, the best thing for readers to do is to keep an open mind when they're looking for their next book. Search a lot of different sections, see what jumps out at you, see what sounds interesting, maybe read a few pages to see if it really grabs you. I think just like keeping yourself open to the exploration is a good way to deal with that.
Yeah, I think genre can be helpful, but it's not the end-all be-all way to decide upon whether you should read a certain book.
Yeah, exactly.
So we still have a lot of thoughts about this, and we're sure that you do too. So we'd love to keep this discussion going on Twitter. We are at CoffeeBreakEBYR, and we'll be talking about this using hashtag #DearGenre. So feel free to join us over there.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts about genre and how it relates to book materials and what it means for writers and readers and publishers and booksellers and teachers and librarians and everyone in the world.
So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
I think Neil Gaiman would be proud of that discussion. That's the measuring stick, really.
Yeah.